Tilda, so you may have noticed that my recent video regarding the Dictionarygate controversy has been taken down from YouTube. Now, some of you may be worrying, no doubt, that this was due to the orchestrated attempt to get the video flagged for harassment, which was attempted by one of the subjects of the video. Fortunately, however, that is not the case, and this orchestrated attempt at censoring a dissenting opinion failed. YouTube did, however, uphold a privacy violation complaint against this video, which was made by a certain individual because I displayed their publicly available Twitter profile. The publicly available Twitter profile, which has been linked to by every single news organization that has covered this story, but I don't see any of them having to lawyer up. What this does, of course, mean is that the video has been removed, but my channel still remains in good standing, therefore I am not going to be limited to the 15-minute upload time, which is good news in itself. So, here's what's going to happen. After this nice, shiny new introduction, I am going to allow the full Dictionarygate video to play out. However, I am going to censor the offending portion. At the end of the entirety of the Dictionarygate video, I will be looking at some of the after-drama and some of the fallout that happened as a result of this video. Those of you who follow me on Twitter will probably be aware of some of that, but we're going to look at a little bit more of it, because this is, I believe, a rare opportunity to see what happens when a special snowflake melts. With this introduction out of the way, I am now going to allow the Dictionarygate video to play through, censored by a totally not rabid feminist. Tilda, the latest event in the great triggering of 2016 has arrived. And of all things that feminists and social justice types are now being triggered by on the internet, it is the dictionary itself. Yes, that thing that so many of them will instantly leap to and say, "Oh, you just need to look up the dictionary definition of feminism," whenever anyone points out anything bad that a feminist or proponent of social justice does. But now the dictionary is sexist, apparently. Let's find out more, shall we? So this entire tale of nonsense began when some guy called Michael Oman-Reagan started thumbing through a dictionary one day and stumbled across the word rabid. And he noticed that the example given was a rabid feminist. And this was apparently very problematic for him, so he decided to tweet at Oxford Words that maybe they should consider changing that. To further add weight to what he believed was a decent case, he then went on to find a few other words that he deemed to have problematic and sexist examples, such as the example for shrill, the rising shrill of a woman's voice, and psyche. I will never really fathom the female psyche. And as you can see, these are clearly sexist examples because they are so very derogatory towards women, in his mind anyway. And his apparent justification for demanding that these sexist examples be changed is that this dictionary is the standard preloaded dictionary in Apple products, so iPhones, iPads, Mac computers, so on and so forth. And this wouldn't normally be too much of an issue. One nutjob on the internet complaining about absolutely nothing? What's new? But apparently this has become a thing that has now been termed Dictionarygate, because every little thing that happens on the internet needs to be suffixed with the word gate, apparently. So the Twitter feminists got their little hate mob together, as they normally do, and descended upon the Oxford Dictionary with all of their hate mail and letters and emails and comments and so on and so forth, which resulted in the Oxford Dictionary doing the most stupid thing that it could have done and actually capitulating to their demands, issuing the statement, "We apologize for the offenses that these comments caused. The example sentences we use are taken from a huge variety of different sources and do not represent the views or opinions of Oxford University Press. That said, we are now reviewing the example sentence for rabid to ensure that it reflects current usage. Other examples raised by Mr. Oman-Reagan will also be reviewed. So after seeing all of this, I thought, well, hell, I'm going to go through this guy's examples that he's given, I'm going to look through them, and then I'll go into the dictionary and see if I can find some examples from the other side. But before I do that, I'd just like to look at one of the examples that this guy gave that really tickled my pickle. Because this one really amused me. Doctor. A person who holds the highest university degree. He was made a Doctor of Divinity, to which Michael Oman-Reagan has said, not surprised to find that the usage example of doctor as holder of a PhD is a he. Now, there's something very amusing about this, given that Mr. Oman-Reagan here claims to be an anthropologist of space, science, and social movements, currently PhDing. Doesn't say what he's studying, but he's going for a PhD in something, so he's clearly somewhat intelligent, and yet doesn't actually know that a Doctor of Divinity is not a PhD. A Doctor of Divinity is an honorary degree. The title is bestowed to individuals who have devoted their lives to theological pursuits or community betterment. In comparison, a traditional doctor program in divinity, such as a Doctor of Philosophy in Divinity, can provide scholars with advanced knowledge and expertise in a particular aspect of religious study. Still don't get it yet? A Doctor of Divinity is not someone who has actually done a PhD. Someone who actually has a doctorate in divinity would be a Doctor of Philosophy in Divinity. Their main title would be Doctor of Philosophy, not Doctor in Divinity. Hey, look, you can even go to themonastery.org and you can buy for $32.99 your very own Doctor of Divinity certificate. Even in circles where this certificate will be taken seriously, such as the University of Life Church, it's not even an academic qualification, it's simply a title, and only useful in religious institutions. This is in no way a PhD. To reiterate again, if you wanted this to be an actual legitimate doctorate, you would be becoming a Doctor of Philosophy or a Doctor of Theology. But yeah, sure, the dictionary's totally showing a PhD holder as being a he, absolutely. It's not showing a con man pretending to be a doctor, or someone who's just been given an honorary title because of their life work. Anyway, I just found that one example particularly amusing. Someone who claims to be an anthropologist and yet doesn't understand humans. Well, when you're complaining about the example sentences in dictionaries, I do have to question your intelligence. Anyway, moving on to the actual fun part now. I too decided to go ahead and cherry-pick some words out of the dictionary that have some problematic and sexist examples. So, as per their point earlier about this being the standard dictionary for Apple products, I fired up the old Apple laptop, opened the dictionary program, and started rummaging around. So I managed to find a suitably gender-neutral word, the word rude. Offensive, impolite, or ill-mannered. And the example is, she had been rude to her boss. So women can be rude to their bosses. Wonderful. However, there is a second example. It's rude to ask a lady her age. So there's a second example there. Defending women, protecting their honor, and all of that good stuff. And then the second offering, referring to a taboo subject such as sex in a way considered improper and offensive. He made a rude gesture. Oh, so men make rude gestures. There's no defense of men in that one, but there you go. That's a reasonably gender egalitarian one. Men can be rude and women can be rude. All good so far. Let's move on. The word stupid was another one that had a reasonably gender egalitarian approach to it. Lacking intelligence or common sense. I was stupid enough to think she was perfect. Now, we don't know if the I in that sentence is male or female, but it's someone chastising themselves for thinking too highly of a woman. That's actually quite complimentary towards women, that people just by default, or through some other means would just assume that a woman is perfect. That's quite complimentary. Next, dazed and unable to think clearly, apprehension was numbing her brain and making her stupid. So we have a woman here who's not actually being described as stupid. There's something happening to her that's making her not think quite clearly. That's not actually an indictment of the woman in that situation. It's an indictment of the thing that's impairing her somehow. And then the third one here, informal, used to express exasperation or boredom. She told him to stop messing with his stupid painting. So the third example there is a woman berating a man because she thinks what he is doing is stupid. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? So, while we actually have both men and women being used in potentially all of the examples here, actually all of the examples are quite complimentary towards women. Someone thought a woman was perfect and chastising themselves for thinking otherwise. A woman is being confounded or in some other way negatively affected by something else, as in she isn't actually stupid, it's something else that's causing it. And then in the third example, a woman is in a position of superiority over a man, believing herself to be more important than he is, because she can just berate what he's doing. Well, if I was someone who wanted to read far too deep into these things because I care about trivialities, I could make a reasonable case that a particular example is unflattering towards men to some degree, but I think we can do better. Let's consider the word brute, shall we? A savagely violent person or animal. He was a cold-blooded brute. Well, that is the only gendered example there. He was a cold-blooded brute. So it's nice to know that men are considered savage, violent animals by the dictionary. Can I cry sexism yet? Probably not. Let's keep going. The word stab. Stab features both men and women in its example, so let's pay some close attention to this. To thrust a knife or other pointed weapon into someone so as to wound or kill. The example, he stabbed him in the stomach. So we have stab, where the example is a man attempting to murder another man. The example that features women is making a thrusting gesture or movement at something with a pointed object. She stabbed at the earth with the fork. She stabbed the air with her forefinger. So the women in the example are doing constructive things. One of the women is stabbing the earth with a fork, perhaps to plant some seeds or to remove some weedly plants. And the second example is of a woman gesticulating, presumably whilst giving an impassioned speech. So when men stab, it's because they want to hurt, maim, or kill people. When women stab, it's because they're being nurturing and caring or emotional and impassioned about something. Is this proof of some casual misandry in the dictionary? Let's keep going. Callous. Showing or having an insensitive and cruel disregard for others. His callous comments about the murder made me shiver. So we have a man being portrayed as insensitive and cruel when it comes to other people. Nothing else going on there. If just the mention of a gender with something that could potentially be negative in the same sentence as them is proof of sexism, then we have clear evidence here that the Oxford Dictionary is sexist against men. But let's see if there's any more examples. Monster. An imaginary creature that is typically large, ugly, and frightening. An inhumanly cruel or wicked person. He was an unfeeling, treacherous monster. And then a more humorous use, a person, typically a child who is rude or badly behaved. Christopher is only a year old, but already he is a little monster. I don't think I really need to add anything else here. Here is a word with negative connotations, and in both examples, the negative example is with a male. I'm sure there's a few more examples I can dig up. Let's go to the good old feminist favourite, rape. The crime committed by a man of forcing another person to have sexual intercourse with him without their consent and against their will, especially by the threat or use of violence against them. The examples: he denied 2 charges of attempted rape. He had committed at least 2 rapes. And the other definition: the abduction of a woman, especially for the purpose of having sexual intercourse with her. Well done, Oxford Dictionary. Rape is a crime exclusively committed by men. At least they don't have a gender-specific target for the victim, thus acknowledging that men can be the victims of rape as well. But they do not acknowledge that women can perpetrate rape as well as men. It is a category of sexual assault known as forced to penetrate. Unless, of course, Oxford Dictionary, you think that a man being forced to have sex with a woman under duress or the threat of violence is somehow not rape, or is somehow something that cannot or does not happen. And of course we have another wonderful example for the verb of a man to force another person to have sexual intercourse with him without their consent and against their will, especially by the threat or use of violence against them. The woman was raped at knife point. Well, there you go. You've got an example now where women are the victim and men are the perpetrators. I don't hear a single feminist campaigning to have this definition updated to acknowledge female perpetrators of rape or male victims of rape. What a shocker that they are totally silent about this one. Things must certainly be feeling a little bit awkward for Mr. Michael Oman-Reagan and all of the internet feminists who have been protesting the OED right about now, because in the space of a few minutes I have found more words with more examples that are more derogatory of men than you have of women. If we want to play a petty point-scoring match, you've lost. But you know what? I don't care. Because words need example sentences to give them context for people. Sometimes the context will use a male example, sometimes the context will use a female example. Sometimes there is reasonable justification for this, other times there might not be. Take, for example, the word shrill, and the shrill rising of women's voices. Generally, women's voices have a higher tenor and a higher pitch than men's voices. Therefore, they are more likely to be shrill when they are raised. They don't have to be, but they are more likely to be. It is a completely reasonable generalized statement. There's no reason for you to go rabid when you don't like the example. If you want to help combat sexism when it comes to the English lexicon, maybe you should start with the dictionary definitions of sexist and sexism, both of which reference prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination typically against women, with examples of male perpetrators and female victims. Maybe these words should be the first words that you amend, to remove the typically against women part, so that they too can be gender neutral and egalitarian. I'd love to see some feminists get behind this initiative to remove the typically against women part from the definitions of sexist and sexism, but I won't hold my breath. Because the last time I held my breath waiting for a feminist to do something that didn't exclusively benefit women, I turned a little bit of a strange colour, and I'm still dealing with that problem to this day. Okay, so that's all of that out of the way. Now let's look at some of the fallout that happened as a result of my critique. So, as sometimes happens when I cover certain topics, people like to share my videos around on the internet. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, you might think, and certainly there isn't. And of course, because this was a critique of Mr. Michael Oman-Reagan's work, where I simply take his own standard of evidence and apply it to certain other examples in the dictionary, some people considered that, hey, maybe he'd actually like to see this criticism and see if there are other words that could do with possibly being amended. Because, as I'm sure you noticed throughout that video, all I actually do is apply his own standard to other words. So naturally, some people decided to share my video with him on Twitter. Now, he did actually respond to me. He has since deleted these tweets. We'll come to that later. He's been doing a lot of deleting of his own tweets. So instead, I'm going to have to present you with this image, which I uploaded to my own Twitter account. So, as we can see here, he tweeted at me, "I haven't watched your mindless rant, but in case you missed it, Oxford disagrees with you." And he links me to his own Medium article, which even after numerous updates never actually addresses his own standard of evidence when applied to examples that are exclusively male and using exclusively negative stereotypes of males, such as the ones we looked at in my video. There is also a sweet irony here that he links to some of the best reporting on this from the media, and all of those news sites link to his publicly available Twitter profile, the one which he flagged my previous video for displaying. So naturally, I responded to this with a short series of tweets, all of which I'm going to read to you now. Because Mr. Oman-Reagan has, of course, deleted his original tweet, I cannot show them to you in a threaded fashion, but I can show you all of the @replies which I made individually to that single tweet. Didn't acknowledge criticism, yet knows how to answer it. No, that article answers nothing of my criticism of your stupidity. If anything, it highlights that you are wrong, because it mentions that the use of rabid in the example is still correct. Poor example does not equal wrong, but you go ahead and cherry-pick and think you're right anyway, like a smug retard. And if you'd bothered to actually listen to the criticism, you'd know that I only address and show other sexist examples. Now, he did actually issue a second tweet in response to me in between the "if anything it highlights" and "poor example does not" tweets. However, since he has deleted these responses, I unfortunately can't show them to you. But at this point, it is abundantly clear that he has no interest in actually addressing a criticism in any capacity at all, and would simply rather hand-wave it away as someone who is mentally inferior to him, making points that are somehow in no way valid. Which, of course, resulted in the predictable and typical feminist block. Now, it was around this time that something rather interesting happened. People were obviously curious as to why he was refusing to address this criticism, and just hand-waving it away with a, "well, I'm just smarter than you, you're just too dumb and you don't get it." And it was around this time that lots of people on Twitter began finding out that they were blocked by this guy, and that any attempt to contact him with a query would be met with a block. And many people found that they had already been preemptively blocked by him, even if they had not previously contacted him, which prompted myself and several others to joke about a hashtag blocked by Reagan, in parody of the now infamous Twitter hashtag blocked by Steve, a hashtag used by people who have been blocked by the YouTuber Steve Shives, even if they've never spoken to him or indeed heard about him. Little did I realize that a few short hours later, that comparison would actually be completely justified. Now, it was around this time that a series of events happened in rapid succession. I'm going to be pulling the following tweets off of an archive, which I will leave in the box below this video. Now, you may notice some disconnect between Mr. Oman-Reagan's screen name and his Twitter profile, and there is a reason for this. He basically went on a mass reporting rampage throughout Twitter, finding any tweet that was even vaguely offensive to him and retweeting it to all of his followers with the phrase "report for harassment," requesting that all 5,000 and something of his followers report that user for harassing him, even if their tweet wasn't even targeting him. But why would this lead to this disconnect between his screen name and his Twitter profile picture? Well, let me explain. Pretty much every time he whined about someone supposedly harassing him, by which he means this person disagreed with my opinion, or asked why I wasn't addressing criticism, he would tag @support, as in the Twitter support channel, which he felt didn't do a good enough job of helping him maintain his Hugbox echo chamber. So he decided to take it upon himself to become the new Twitter support. Which is why some of the further demonstration tweets you will notice that his account is now called Twitter Support, and he is using the Twitter Support profile image, thus impersonating the Twitter Support channel, something which I find absolutely hilarious, because a couple of days later, he will then tweet about how Twitter has banned an account parodying a Twitter account, while not banning neo-Nazis, implying that anyone who impersonates a Twitter account should be banned from Twitter. Seriously, you can't make this stuff up. You are witnessing the mental meltdown of a gold medal winning mental gymnast. So he continued this rampage for a number of hours, pretending to be the Twitter support account. I can only hope that no one was fooled into divulging any sort of personal information about themselves to this account while he was impersonating them, all the time mocking Twitter and what he perceived as their lack of action in regards to the supposed harassment that he was receiving. This is clearly someone who has failed to realize that if you behave like a child having a tantrum and throwing your toys out the pram, that is how people are going to treat you. And as per his own advice here on his very own Twitter feed where he is impersonating the Twitter support, yes, I have taken a screenshot of this because I have enjoyed his overnight service as an impersonator of Twitter. I wonder if Twitter would like to know that he took a brief stint impersonating their accounts. Just a rhetorical question and thought there. Rather hilariously, or should I say sadly, this is not actually where the drama ends. Of course it isn't. Because calling for all of your followers to mob flag a video that you don't like isn't good enough. Filing the most dubious privacy complaint imaginable because someone displayed your publicly available information isn't enough. Creating a block list of over 200,000 people and encouraging all of your followers to block that same over 200,000 people because guilt by association isn't fallacious reasoning apparently isn't enough. Impersonating a Twitter account in order to mock your perception of Twitter isn't enough. Nope, let's just go absolute whole hog out there and accuse every single person who dares to disagree with you of being an MRA and Gamergator. That's the only next rational course of action, isn't it? And is totally not the action that we have seen before from rabid feminists. Can't answer criticism? Call them an MRA. Call them a Gamergator. I'm quite surprised you didn't put the word misogynist in there. Oh wait, you did that on your brief little stint when you were pretending to be Twitter support. Because all of these so-called harassers, which is just anyone you don't like, has to be a racist, misogynist, Islamophobe, MRA, Gamergator, don't they? It's the only possible explanation. It couldn't be a problem with you, it's a problem with everyone else. And I couldn't help but notice throughout all of these accusations, you've still got that sneaky little slash in between the @ mention so you don't accidentally tag me so that I can see what you're accusing me of. Unfortunately for you, public archives are public. And to just add one final sweep of hilarity to this nonsense, this guy went crying to lolheartmob for help. And if you don't know what lolheartmob is, I'm going to leave a link in the box below this video and a card right here to Mr. Metaker's video about it, because it's fucking hilarious. It really is the hug box online that this guy so desperately needs. So I think that about wraps it up for all of the bullshit e-drama fallout from someone daring to criticize a feminist who complained to the dictionary about an example being rabid feminist. This guy is a living, breathing irony machine. And now I'm going to leave you with my personal favorite example of what he considers to be online harassment. Someone tweets me a screenshot to which I reply, "Teehee, report for harassment!"